Welcome to the Whiskey Vault. I'm Daniel Whittington, Chancellor of Wizard Academy and Whiskey Marketing School. Today we're going to talk about gatekeepers, sort of. So in my music career, I had various levels of success. I've played all the way from a club where the only people listening were the sound guy and his girlfriend that he invited, all the way up to like 16,000 person small stadiums. And I've played around a lot of famous people. I've played with what I consider some famous people, and I've opened for or met a lot of what I consider famous people. Now, and there's something that they all had in common that I started recognizing as I was in the industry. Now, I'm not quite talking about people like Paul McCartney or like U2 or, Rolling Stones kind of people, because there's a certain level of famous where you sort of live in an alternate reality. That's not what I'm talking about. I haven't met many of those people. I'm sure they're great. I don't have anything bad to say about them. But I'm talking about, like, if I'm talking about Texans, it would be like, or not just Texans, but like Lyle Lovett, Emmylou Harris, Billy Gibbons, Gary Clark Jr., reasonable success, relatively famous musicians. And something I have found over and over and over is that when you meet them, they are inevitably kind and gracious and interested in you and asking questions. And if it was in a music situation, promoting and lifting and really helping, and talking about each other and other musicians, and just general, like, nothing to prove. They've made it, and what they've done with their fame is be more kind. And in almost 20 years of professional music, I have found very few exceptions to that rule. Shockingly, you would think that would be a percentage. Shockingly few exceptions to that rule with a legitimately famous person being a jerk. Now, I have met a lot of jerks in the music industry. A lot of assholes. And one of the things they all had in common, and I can't think of an exception to this, is they had a medium level of success. I'm going to call it middle class successful, lower middle class successful. Just enough success that maybe they're in a bus instead of a van, or maybe they've got some fans and people are showing up, they're playing slightly bigger venues. And what they've done with that small amount of power is become self-entitled, self-important assholes who think that everything is owed to them and that they've earned this success and they're important. Now, I'm not saying everybody who achieves that level of success becomes that way, but I'm saying when I think back in my music history, when I met an asshole, they almost always fell into that category. And one of the things they all had in common is gatekeeping. They were the people who would decide who was cool, who was in the scene, who wasn't, who was playing real punk, who wasn't playing real punk, and so on. They were going to be the ones who decided who was real and who wasn't real. Talking trash about other bands they didn't think measured up. Talking trash about bands they thought sold out. And I had a whole other video on that, if you'll remember. And I realized very quickly I didn't want anything to do with that. No matter what level of music success I had, I wanted to be the one who showed up, who helped set up, who supported the backline team, who supported the other bands, who was doing their best to lift other musicians and other bands around them. And I'll explain why I'm bringing this up in a second. First, let's talk about Ardnahoe. Now, I just recently did it a couple months ago. And that was the Ardnahoe, I think the first edition or something like that. This one I'm doing because Richard Amiro brought it and gave it as a gift to the tower and the vault. And I've been really wanting to try it. I've been seeing it on the shelf. Ardnahoe is a new distillery on Isla. 2013 they opened. And it was a Hunter Lang and family who were independent bottlers. And then they opened up their own distillery called Ardnahoe. What they've been releasing, I think the last one I did was 5 years old. So it's young malt. I mean, Ardbeg 5, Wee Beastie is 5. And this one, I don't know how old it is because I couldn't find it. But it's sherry cask focused. So it's named Bholsa, which is the caves that are along the coast on the northwest coast where they are. But it's matured predominantly in Oloroso sherry casks. And I love Oloroso sherry cask whiskeys. So here goes. Ooh. Ooh, I like it. It is young and bright and shiny, bold. If I had to guess, I would say average age 4.5, 4.5, with maybe some 6-year-old barrels in there, 7-year-old. But it's a little bit, I think this might be a little younger than the last one. I'm going off of memory though, so who knows. It's got it actually reminds me a little bit of Wee Beastie in that it's got this like smoky, like vibrant, malty note that's just brash and like, hell yeah, I'm here, check me out. But that sherry oloroso is softening some of the edges of that smoke and ash. Ooh, that's weird. Okay, that's where the youth is coming in, I think, in the palate. There's this bright, bold, grainy, ashy note, and then immediately this dense, like, heavy, sweet candy middle. Almost like, remember those strawberry candies you'd get in the wrapper that looks like a strawberry with, like, seeds and everything? And you would suck on it, like, and then halfway through it would crack, and there would be, like, a liquid strawberry something inside. It's sort of like that. Like, you take it, and you're sucking on hard candy, and then crack, you get this like juicy kernel in the middle of this thing. Yeah, this thing just sits. Wow, I've never experienced anything like that, or not recently. It sits like a bowl. Like everything just settled into a perfect circle in the dead middle of my palate, and it's not really ghosting up the edges. It's just went shroomp and sank like a rock, like earth, kernel, sweet, dark fruit, slight almond, tannic, young barley, ash on the edges, middle dense sweet kernel. That's interesting. I can't wait to see where that ends up. It's obviously a well-made whiskey. I'd love to see that palate sort of become a little more cohesive. It doesn't feel entirely like it's tying itself together, but it's a good product. Like, it's a good whiskey, well-made whiskey. Add a little bit of water. That sort of softened out the edges of the. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna come back to that in a second. It's interesting. I like this. Okay, after the music industry, I got into the whiskey industry. First education, then whiskey. And I got into whiskey industry for education and the whiskey industry for production. And I found a lot of the same people. And what I mean is, as I started to meet people who were legit fame and like legit well-known and doing really amazing things in the whiskey industry, people, like Jared Hempstead, people like Marianne Eaves, people like the No family and the Samuels and the Williams and the Russells and John Campbell, Nancy Fraley, Charles McLean, like over and over and over, you meet these people and they're kind and they're generous and they're interested in you and they've let go of some of the rules, and they're just like really encouraging and looking for ways to help and in production you can call them and they'll be like, and I have ran into this problem, they'll be like, oh, this is probably this, and very open-handed, right? Then there's another group who are assholes. And when I go look at the people who are being assholes, the thing they all have in common is two things. One, they've appointed themselves gatekeepers and of who is real and who is not and who's allowed in and who isn't. And they are almost all medium successful. Like, a small amount of people know who they are, people that they consider to be important, and instead of it making them kind, it's made them pretentious and made them decide that their approach to life is going to be to stake a claim of who is and isn't okay. And I was reminded yet again, Daniel, don't be that guy. Don't be the guy who stands on the outside trying to decide who belongs in. Don't be the guy who's always trying to isolate. Be the guy who's widening the tent. And it got hard in the early days of the whiskey school because there were moments where I was like, I disagree with what you're doing. I think that's wrong. And so I had to think to myself, well, how do I be the person I want to be? Because I still think that's a valid opinion, but I don't want to be the guy who's like, no, you're bullshit. And so what I try to regrid towards is like, what's your intent? What is the thing you're trying to accomplish? And even if you're doing it poorly, how can I be a part of anything that helps push you into the direction of you actually achieving the thing that you were saying you wanted to do and doing it well, instead of someone standing on the sidelines griping at you? And I haven't figured that out entirely yet, but I'm working on it. In the meantime, I keep my mouth shut about what I think, except in very, very small groups of like-minded, kind people who I know are not going to let it go to their head. So I say all of this to say, oh, and by the way, side note, I did find out one really kind of cool thing. If you simply stick around, keep showing up, keep consistently doing good stuff and be open-handed and keep delivering, most of those people, they quit. They don't have staying power. They vanish. And you can outlast them, it turns out, which is nice. If you in your world or your industry have stumbled into the gatekeeping crew, or God forbid, are part of the gatekeeping crew, then stop it. If you stumbled into the gatekeeping crew, just know, don't let it get you down. Keep showing up, keep doing things, keep consistently trying to improve and deliver value. And if you don't go anywhere, eventually, you'll outlast them. And no one will remember their names. Cheers to you. I'm really glad you're here. You may not remember my name, but you can like and subscribe, and maybe eventually you will